The Rams keep their season alive with a Week 7 win over the Raiders. We got an update on Cooper Kupp, big takeaways, winners and losers. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor, join the party and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 sports, Bleacher Report, SI, Dodgers Nation, the Rams for Locked On. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's in his 9th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. On today's episode, we got an update on Cooper Kupp. Will we see him against the Vikings this Thursday? Also, big takeaways and winners and losers from the Rams win over the Raiders. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Down the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Travis. So the Rams keep hope alive with a win over the Raiders, 20-15. They improved to 2-4 on the season, so still an uphill battle, but a win is a win. The offense did not look great throughout. The defense created 4 takeaways. It was probably the least productive we've seen Matthew Stafford. We'll talk about that, but still, bottom line, a win is a win, and you keep your hope alive for this season.
Yeah, I think that challenges the question, right? Is a win, and you never apologize for a win? I agree with that, but I do think that there's some context to a win that needs to be taken into consideration when you have a team that is very likely going to be on the outside looking in, and what can you get for some of the assets that you may have. Like you just said, Doug, they won the game. They took the ball away 4 times. They had a defensive score. They did not give up a touchdown defensively, and they had a chance to lose the game to the worst team in the league. So, they won. The worst team in the league didn't score a touchdown, turned it over 4 times, and nearly beat you. So what does that mean? And I think that's the question that the Rams have to ask themselves going into Thursday night against Minnesota, trying to figure out what to do with Cooper Kupp, try to figure out what to do with Matthew Stafford. What they did, I think the win, the good news on the win is it allowed you to go into Minnesota and try to win that game and see if you can get within a game of 500. You're going to Seattle the week after that, and maybe, inch by inch, crawl your way back into it. But they need to play light years better than they did. The Raiders were the only team in the NFL they would beat playing like that, and thankfully that's exactly who they were playing.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that really stands out is it almost felt like they survived versus they kind of won, but in the standings, it still counts as a win. And if you lose that game, your season truly is over, but it's still alive at this point. You look at that offense. I mean, you're coming out of the bye. You got Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford. You gained just 259 total yards. You had 2 offensive touchdowns thanks to Kyren Williams and his strength in the red zone. But you also look at that Raiders team that had a really good game plan. They were coming out of a bye as well against this Rams team that's still not playing with their top players. I mean, you still have Cooper Kupp out, Puka Nacua out. You're still missing some offensive linemen. And you look at the offense, you had just 67 yards of total offense on your first 4 offensive possessions. You had 47 yards on your 5th drive, and you had a 13-yard touchdown by Kyren Williams. But really the thing that stands out is you got 14 points off of turnovers in the first half thanks to Cobie Durant. Durant was fantastic in this one.
Yep.
He intercepted Gardner Minshew in the second quarter. That led to the Kyren Williams touchdown. And on the very next offensive possession, Durant had the strip sack that was recovered and returned for a 33-yard touchdown by Cam Curl. He's high-stepping into the end zone. So there were some positives with the defense, and you got to give them credit for keeping them in it. But, yeah, I mean, look, there's a couple ways to look at it. On the offensive side of the football is, Kyren Williams did Kyren Williams things. Matthew Stafford was not very productive, and that's kind of the first big takeaway is we haven't seen a great version of Matthew Stafford so far this season. And I think it's a combination of just not having his dudes, right? It's a combination of just the offensive line being patchwork at times. And he threw for just 154 yards. That was the fewest in a game that he started and finished as a member of the Rams. He played 14 of 23 passes, no touchdowns, had an interception by Spillane that was picked off by Nate Hobbs. I mean, he just did not look crisp out there. And I do think, the decisions weren't great by Matthew Stafford. I also think that, look, he was under pressure, doesn't have his guys. And let's just be honest. I mean, he's not playing with true WR1s and WR2s right now. So you're seeing it on display.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things in there. Like you mentioned, the defense, which was kind of the soft spot of this team coming into the season and maybe through the early part of the season, has really made some strides. And like you mentioned, they had 4 takeaways. Cobie Durant had an interception and a forced fumble, like you mentioned. Those set up not set up. It set up the first one from Kyron Williams, and they scored on defense with their second. Their third touchdown of the day was set up with an interception with Jaylen McCollough as well. The Rams did not did not have a traditional drive that ended in points. They had one that was a field goal that bounced off an upright. So they moved the ball a little bit there, but all 3 of their touchdowns were set up by a defensive play or just flat out a defensive score. So the good news is that the defense put the offense in advantageous positions. And if the Rams are going to win some games, they're going to have to continue to do that. I think that with regard to Matthew Stafford, this is the challenge that Sean McVay has right now. This is the challenge that he has to ask himself, which is Matthew Stafford playing poorly because he's just playing poorly, or is he playing poorly because Cooper Kupp isn't there, Puka Nacua isn't there, Colby Parkinson really hasn't carried his weight? The offensive line had not 1 but 2 rookies playing up in front of him at center and at left guard. They put in Justin Dydick this week in place of Logan Bruss, who seems to have fallen out of favor again. So is it just the result and the residue of not having any of those weapons, or is he not playing well? And trying to separate those two things, I think, is at the top of Sean McVay's list. I think, hopefully, and I'm sure we'll talk about this today and later on in the week as we get closer to Thursday, Cooper Kupp's return will inform some of those decisions. But like you said, Matthew Stafford has not played well. I just don't know yet whether it's him or whether it's everything around him.
Yeah, I think I mean, is he going to war with butter knives type thing? Is he a Bentley, but he's got the donut tires? Yeah. Right? I mean, I think for Stafford, we know the arm talent's there, but also we've seen some bad decisions. At the end of the day, there's bad decisions. I mean, the interception, you got the linebacker again right into the throwing lane, and he puts himself in that situation. I do think there's a little bit of, man, I kind of have to do this all by myself, but then Kyron Williams is helping out for sure. And then also one of the big questions that Rams fans are having and screaming at the television was, where the heck is Jordan Whittington, right? I mean, Jordan Whittington not getting opportunities out there. He was the one guy that was kind of in the mold of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, and he's been really the focal point with them out. He played in 90% of the snaps, had 13 receptions for 161 yards in weeks 4 and 5. He had 18 targets during that stretch, but in Sunday's win, I mean, he only was targeted once and he played 9 snaps. And Sean McVay talked about the reason was he basically was still dealing with the effects of that shoulder injury. So, I mean, he was mainly used as a blocker now. And so that was the reason for that. So you add even more injuries to the reason why Matthew Stafford doesn't have as many weapons. And yes, Tutu Atwell's doing his very best. He's out there making plays occasionally. Demarcus Robinson, though, has been a really big disappointment for me. He was targeted just 3 times. He had 1 catch for 9 yards, and he wasn't able to make that catch and keep his feet in bounds on that sideline catch. And look, that's a catch. We know Puka Nacua keeps his feet in bounds. We know that Cooper Kupp keeps his feet in bounds. I think Demarcus Robinson, I don't want to say he's a WR3 merchant, but it's pretty evident to me now that his success last season was largely due to having Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and taking advantage of those looks he was getting. But he's not really creating separation on offense as a wide receiver.
No. Look, like, you're asking starters to be stars, you're asking backups to be starters, and you're asking practice squad guys to be backups. You can't ask everybody to step up a level. That's just simply not going to work. Just very quickly before we move on to the next thing, I want to go back to something you said at the beginning about Matthew Stafford's arm strength still being there. Are we sure? I'm not putting it out there. I'm asking the question. are we sure? Like, when was the last time you went, whoa? Like, okay, there are a couple that have not looked like classic Matthew Stafford throws this season. And look, hopefully it's more a function of the personnel around him. But there have been a couple of throws this year that made me go, are we good? And let's see. Puka Nacua, hopefully back before too long. Cooper Kupp, hopefully back this weekend or this Thursday night, I should say. I'm just saying that's something that I went, for the first time with Matthew Stafford since a couple of years ago, when I'm convinced he had some sort of arm thing going on. Last year he looked terrific, and this year that didn't look like a Matthew Stafford throw.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the PFF grade, 62.6 PFF grade. They did give him credit for one big-time throw, but he also had a turnover-worthy play, had an offensive grade just 48.9, the adjusted completion percentage of 70%. Also, all quarterbacks with more than 155 dropbacks. Gardner Minshew had a 54.1 PFF grade, the only quarterback ranked lower than Stafford for this season when he's at 56.5. So, he just has not looked like Matthew Stafford. Has he lost his fastball a little bit? I think that maybe, but I think that for him, it's really to be determined when he gets his full arsenal of weapons back. But, I mean, the truth of the matter is that he's still capable, but look, Father Time is undefeated, and I also think that he's just limited because of the weapons. But, we need to see him step up. For this team to truly make a run, I mean, last year they were 3-6, and they made that run because he was playing fantastic, and he made the Pro Bowl. So they need that version of Matthew Stafford back to truly make a run. But coming up next, we are going to talk about the defensive side of the football, winners and losers. There were some positive takeaway, and it was a win. At the end of the day, this is a victory show for the Rams. But that's coming next on Locked On Rams.
NFL fans, why are you not starting your season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook? So we all get them, right? You get that little, I think I know something good's about to happen, or maybe, quite the opposite. You got that feeling, here comes something not so good. You can check out all the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the very same page where you're placing your bets. And FanDuel, they want to get you started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet with FanDuel. So put the FanDuel app on your phone. You can go to FanDuel.com, and let's take a quick look at what's coming up with the Rams and the Vikings this week. And the Rams are a 3-point home underdog. The Rams are getting 3 points at home. If you want to do the point spread, of course, the money line, the Rams are a +144, Minnesota a -172 coming into this one. So a relatively close game, according to the folks at FanDuel. And if you like the totals, and really who doesn't like the total, 48.5 points. So if you like the over on that, it's going to probably be a lot of Justin Jefferson and Sam Darnold. But all of this is available to you at FanDuel.com. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Also, let's talk about LinkedIn. Are you hiring for your small business? If you are, you're going to want to find quality professionals that are not just available, but right for the role. That's why you've got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just getting a warm body into that role. It's finding the right person for the job that you have open, because LinkedIn is not just a job board. It helps you hire professionals you're not going to find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users do not visit other LinkedIn job sites or leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. And if you haven't joined that Everyday Listeners Club too, you should definitely do it. Just listen or watch an episode Monday through Friday, and you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. All right, Travis, here in our second segment, going to focus a little on that defense. So yes, the offense, they definitely weren't in rhythm. They took advantage of the defense stepping up and making key takeaways. Now,
they were bad. Let's just call it what it was. The offense was bad. There's no euphemism. It was bad. They didn't do. Kyron Williams scored a touchdown, extended his streak. Period, sentence, paragraph. That's the good part of the offense. Defense, like you said, D-Mac, there's a lot of bright spots there.
Yeah, I mean, look, seriously, like, it's tough to defend the offense. I mean, really, the offense of the first half, they were bad. Second half, you could make the case they were even worse. I mean, you just couldn't move the ball with any consistency against this Raiders team that's been reeling. You do have talent over there. You have Max Crosby, and you have guys on line that could wreak some havoc. You had a good game plan coming out of the bye. But, I mean, your best drive of the game in the second half, I mean, you had a 35-yard field goal, and it was missed by Josh McCarty. I mean, did the Rams have special teams issues once again? I mean, that's something that kind of stood out to me. So if it wasn't for Cobie Durant and McCollough and Quinn Lake and these defensive players, Jared Verse and Byron Young, creating pressure, I mean, you could be staring down the barrel of a worst team in the NFL conversation. But thankfully, they did step out. It wasn't perfect, though. I mean, they definitely benefited from the key takeaways, and takeaways really are the great equalizer on defense, because if you look at it one way, you could also make the case that, look, the Raiders not really having a WR1, they took advantage. I mean, you had Brock Bowers, Alexander Madison. I mean, they were rubbing up and down that field against the Rams. They had 317 total yards with McConnell and Minshew and just the team that they were putting together. But really want to point out first Cobie Durant. Now, Cobie Durant had really his best game, and unfortunately, he goes out. But, I mean, a 94.6 PFF grade. I mean, that's elite. He had coverage grades 93.7, 93. He stripped the ball away from Minshew. That led to the TD. He had a sack. He on his only pass rushing attempt. I mean, he was incredible against Brock Bowers. And he was lining up in the slot. I mean, he did a fantastic job. So, yeah, got to give him tons of credit for having a big impact in this one. He's one of the major reasons why they were able to get the win.
He was terrific. He was flat out terrific. And I think if you use him as the example, I'm sure we'll talk about Jaylen McCollough coming up here in just a little bit. But and you mentioned some of these other guys, whether it's Jared Verse and some others. Through the first 7 weeks of the season, the defensive, if we're plotting the performance of the defense, it's trending in the right direction. They're getting better. It's not perfect. There's still some flaws there, but from the beginning of the season to where they are right now, the defense has gotten better. The thing that the Rams had not done seemingly in forever was score on defense. They've scored on defense in their last 2 games. That's really good news for them. That defense is trending in a very positive space. I think that you give Chris Shula some credit for that, because again, you're covering for a lot. They got a lot of problems covering in the secondary, I think, but it's getting better. I think, and not to turn this right back to the offense again, but the offense surprisingly has not carried its water so far this season. Now there are explanations for it, namely injuries to the wide receiver position more than anything else. But defensively speaking, that this was very good news for the Rams. Now, take it with a small grain of salt. The Raiders stink. The Raiders are lousy. Gardner Minshew is just barely a backup quarterback in this league. So there were some flaws in your opponent along the way. But the good news is you took advantage of them. You're supposed to take it away 4 times on a team like the Raiders. You're supposed to beat a team like the Raiders that decides to kick a field goal down 8 points with 4 minutes left. I mean, all of the decision-making that the Raiders did helped you win the game as well. But defensively speaking, the Rams did a really good job on Sunday afternoon.
They did. I think that, I'm looking at the positives as far as this season, but also long term. And I think with Darius Williams back, that really helps Cobie Durant settle into a role. I do feel like he's taken the next step. And the question is, what didn't he do on the football field? You look at that line, 2 tackles, 1 sack, an interception. He had 2 pass defense, had a forced fumble. He just comes in that game. He intercepts Gardner Minshew in the second quarter. That set up the Kyron Williams touchdown. And then the next drive, you see that blitz. He's coming off the edge. He just does a great job knocking that ball out of Minshew's hand for the strip sack, and that leads to a touchdown. So no Cobie Durant, no win on Sunday. I think that's simple for me and his impact of the game. Also, I think defensively, one of the big reasons why they won, one of the big plays of the game was that big red zone stop late in the fourth quarter. And Quentin Lake makes that tackle on Brock Bowers. It saved the touchdown. If they get that touchdown, they have a chance to tie it with a 2-point conversion. And that was just a great play. Quentin Lake has been one of the best tacklers all year. UCLA Bruin going there making big plays. Comes on that 3rd and 4. And you got Brock Bowers, who shows that potential. And there's a reason, Travis, why we wanted Brock Bowers in the Rams' horns. And
it's so
certainly
funny to say that.
he's realizing that potential. So, yeah, I mean, that was just a fantastic play. And he's been really a dependable tackler. And you're seeing his growth this season as well.
Yeah, Q made a great play there. And like you said, that put the Raiders in a weird position. And then the Raiders raided and took a penalty and went back in the wrong direction and then made another Raider-like decision to kick a field goal there, which for the life of me doesn't make any sense. But I thought the same thing you did, D-Mac. Watching that game, I keep looking at it going, Brock Bowers would have been a nice fit on this football team. He's terrific. I'm excited to get to watch him as a football fan moving forward. I think he's going to be a really good player in this league for a long time. But while maybe that didn't work out, you didn't get your hands on an elite tight end the way that he clearly is. The guy that they did get's awfully good too.
100%.
Yeah. So it's not like you
clear their needs. I mean, Bowers would have been such a luxury at that point for the Rams.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're seeing, I mean, there's a reason why. But when you said that you were thinking the same thing as me, I thought you were going to say that Quinn Lake's alma mater, UCLA, Deshaun Foster, has the same number of Big Ten wins as Lincoln Riley this season. I thought you were going to say that because they beat Rutgers, but maybe not. But coming up next, more big takeaways, more winners and losers, and a little Cooper Kupp date. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
Is there anything going on in and around LA right now? Is there anything quite like this time of year? If you're a sports fan, think about what's going on. Rams have a game on Thursday night. Chargers are playing games right now. The Dodgers and the Yankees are in the World Series on Friday night. The Lakers open their season tonight, as a matter of fact, play again on Friday night. The Kings are playing. The Ducks are playing. What do all these things have in common? You need to get a ticket to whatever it is you want to go see. And this is where Game Time comes in. Do you have the Game Time app on your phone? Why not? Put the Game Time app on your phone because there's nothing like watching live sports at this time of year, right? We're talking about everything that you could possibly think of, curated deals to make it even easier to find the best price on incredible seats. All in pricing. This is my favorite part. You've heard me talk about this on Game Time over and over again. You toggle this feature on, it shows you the total up front, so no surprises at the end where you're like, wait, that's not what we agreed to. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. It is the best time of year to go take in an event, but you got to get your tickets, and you got to get your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Terms apply. Again, create the account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Travis, here in our third segment, we're going to look forward a little bit. And, of course, it's a really quick turnaround. You got Thursday Night Football against a really good Vikings team, and you're continuing to try to keep this season alive. And, yes, it was an ugly win. There's no doubt about that for the Rams. I do like the fact that you had Raiders and Rams fans, I don't know if you saw that, walking out of the stadium chanting "Let's go Dodgers" together.
I'll take it.
It was kind of like that Ninja Turtles Power Rangers meme where they're shaking hands, the Ninja Turtles and the Power Rangers. By the way, it's always about the Green Ranger, man. R.I.P. Tommy. But, I mean, I think the big question now is the healthier you get, the better this team hopefully gets. And you can kind of wipe away the first part of the season with every win. And, yes, it's not going to be easy, but having Cooper Kupp back is definitely going to open some things up. And Sean McVay said yesterday that his workload for Thursday is, quote, to be determined. And that'll be something that as we're putting it together and really diving into it, we'll have a better feel for it, but definitely excited to have him back. So you got the first of two Rams top receivers back in Cooper Kupp. You got Matthew Stafford's top target, I mean, for the last couple of years with the Rams. So it can only help, hopefully, and that guys start to go into the roles that they expected them to have to start the year.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things going on here. You're going to start to get a better understanding of what you have offensively with Cooper Kupp back, assuming that Cooper Kupp plays, and I'm optimistic that he will. That you can start to answer some of these questions that we talked about earlier in the show, and the everydayers have heard us talk about over the last several weeks. Like, is this an offensive problem or is this an injury problem? Cooper Kupp will help answer some of those questions. If you can go into Minnesota or have Minnesota come into town here and win that game, you buy yourself another week. They bought themselves another week with the win against the Raiders. As ugly as it was, as dissatisfying of a performance as it was, you bought yourself a chance to go out there and compete again on Thursday night against a good team and see what happens after that. Beat Minnesota. And by the way, they're coming off a tough game against the Detroit Lions. Everybody that's played the Lions loses the following week. So that's good news there. They got to travel, so they have an even shorter week than you do. There's an opportunity there for sure. Win that game, and now all of a sudden you can go to Seattle and come home at 500, and you do what you did last year, where you keep buying yourself an opportunity to go and compete again the next week. The opposite happens, and I think the writing's on the wall. I don't think if it matters if you win by a point or lose by a point or win by 30 or lose by 30. I think that 2-5, knowing what's coming up, looking around the rest of the division, I think it's pretty clarifying what it is that you have. But the good news is Cooper Kupp's return gives you optimism for the offense. And if they can score, they have not looked good on offense really all season long. And if Kupp comes back, hey, that's not an offensive problem. That's an injury problem. If he comes back and it still looks kind of stale, then we're having a different conversation.
Exactly. That's the big question. I think that you have to wonder what is going to be his snap count. I mean, if you look at where the Rams have been with Cooper Kupp out, I mean, you're seeing DeMarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson get a lion's share of those snaps. So will it be Kupp as their WR1 combination, DeMarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson as wide receiver 2, and then wide receiver 3, a combination of Tutu Atwell and Jordan Whittington with Xavier Smith at wide receiver 4. And we know how Sean McVay likes to run things real top heavy with his wide receivers. So yeah, I mean, I'm very curious to see how they're going to execute with that, but also think too, I mean, if you're Cooper Kupp and you're Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay, you have to say, look, at some points now or never for this season.
It's right here. You got to win some games. You got to win some games, and a win against Minnesota, really, regardless of how it happens, even if they have another situation similar to what they did against the Raiders, where they don't look, but you win. It's like, all right, 3-4. The NFC West is not very good. San Francisco's got all sorts of problems. Seattle is a team that's kind of all over the map. I don't know if they're good, bad, or somewhere in the middle. Go ahead and try to figure Arizona out. I have no idea if they're any good or not. I don't think they have any idea if they're good or not. And maybe 9 wins wins this division. Now, 9 wins from here, you got to find 7 wins in your remaining 11 games. That's asking a lot for a good team. I don't know if the Rams are a good team yet so far this season, but you buy yourself another week with a win on Thursday.
Yeah, and we're going to do a full preview of that, but it's going to be tough. I mean, you had Sam Darnold, who has found his way into a starting quarterback's role. He's done a really nice job. Got to give him credit for that. And then Justin Jefferson, you got playmakers. You got Brian Flores, defense, a lot of blitzing, heavy blitzing there. And then, like you said, that Seattle team, what really are they? I mean, you had a nice start to your season. You stacked wins, but those wins are against the Bo Nixes, the Jacoby Brissetts, the Skylar Thompsons. So they've definitely come down to earth a little bit. And then after that, you got the Dolphins. So there is a path to 500. It's not an easy path. But, I mean, I think we're going to learn a lot about this team against a elite team this season as far as their record goes on Thursday against the Vikings. Hopefully it's kind of a weird Thursday night affair.
Hopefully.
Right? So it's not your normal Thursday in the short week and the Rams getting reinforcements. But still, the season's alive. A win's a win. You love to beat the Raiders, right? You love to beat the silver and black, especially here in Los Angeles. And, look, the good thing is I'd rather have a win with a lot of issues than a loss where they looked really good, right? So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Maybe.
Well, you wouldn't have a lot. Okay,
what I don't want is to trick yourself into thinking you have a good team when you don't, and you don't move things that can bring back a positive return to have this team be better sooner than later. The Rams fans, I'm sorry, you're going to hear it. The rebuild is coming. And it's coming sooner than later, and you better have enough assets to make it a short rebuild as opposed to a long one. And if you keep some certain guys around past that moment where you can't move them anymore, that's not a good thing. Don't fool yourself because you beat the worst team in the league barely. Let's see what it looks like on Thursday, and we can have a different conversation.
No doubt about that. I mean, look, you have to have honest conversations about your rebuild if you need that. I mean, the truth of the matter is after Aaron Donald retired, you kind of were forced into a rebuild as far as how that dictated your draft. But thankfully, you hit on that. Jared Verse has been fantastic so far. But yeah, look, I mean, what must be done eventually should be done immediately type mentality. And this is the NFL. You don't want to hold on as long as possible. I mean, look at that Raiders team heading into this one. I mean, you weren't even really talking about the team. You're talking about Devontae Adams. You were talking about, is the honeymoon phase over with Antonio Pierce? You're talking about Tom Brady, right? You don't want to enter that mode. I don't know if you saw any of the Devontae Adams memes, but they were pretty awesome.
I did.
This last week. I mean, I love the one. You mean, lose the Steelers, gets traded, lose the Steelers. I mean, yeah, Devontae Adams, it's
he had a nice tackle.
Happy in New York.
Had a nice tackle on that interception.
Oh, you saw that tackle there? I know, right?
That was good.
That meme was hilarious with if it was like Devontae Adams said, "I'll be damned if someone gets a pick six off my boyfriend," and he's like stretched out. I mean, yeah, that was the highlight of the night for the Jets. But that's gonna do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA, and you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.